Hi everybody, this is Mrs. Stoll, and today I wanted to show you how to make a pinch pot out of clay. So you're going to be given a random lump of clay. It could look like this, it could look like a block of clay, but either way, you don't want it to stay looking like this. You want it to be a more circular lump of clay. So I'm going to start by just forming it in my hand. So I'm trying to get it to be more round by taking it in my hand and kind of pushing, pressing, working it around maybe with my thumbs and to get it a little more rounded. Now, once I've got this, I want to get it more smooth. And I don't want to do that by rolling it in my hands because it's going to dry out the clay too much. Instead, I want to roll it on this mat. This mat has kind of a coating on it. You could also use the plain table, but this is not very absorbent, so it's going to be okay to roll it on. So I'm going to kind of roll it, and I switch directions every once in a while. Kind of put a little bit of pressure on it, roll it around. And if I keep rolling too long in one direction, it's going to make like this kind of little pointy thing. If that happens, just give it a little tap. I can keep doing that if I see something else sticking out, give it a little tap, roll it around. And I'm going to do that, for maybe a minute. I don't want to spend too long on this. You're never going to get it to be like some perfect sphere. So you do not need to worry about spending your whole time doing that. Okay, so I've got it into, a pretty rounded shape. The next step is to take my thumbs. I'm going to put them in the center. I'm going to press and turn, press and turn, and press and turn. And notice I'm not doing this on the mat. I'm holding it in my hand to do this. I stop after, 3-4 presses because if I kept going, I would go through the bottom. I know this does not look like much right now, but it's just the start of our bowl. The bottom is the thickness we want. Maybe about the thickness of your finger. That's a good amount. So now I want to get the sides to that same thickness. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be pressing and turning with both, the thumb and the outer part of my hands, but I'm going to be doing it kind of like I'm spiraling out. So if here's where I started, and I'm going to kind of going like this as I press and turn. And I notice too, I'm not, again, setting it on the table. I'm doing this in my hand. So now I'm going to press and turn, press and turn. And I kind of feel too to see where is thicker and thinner. So as I'm doing this, if I notice that, there's a really thick spot here, I might put more pressure here. Here I feel like it's already fine. So I'm going to kind of just gently hold that part, maybe not press as I go around that direction. And now I'm at least halfway up the middle here now. This is starting to look more like a bowl, and I'm getting towards the edges. And I kind of almost hold this a little bit flat, maybe a little more like a lobster claw. Because if I press too much like this, I might go through it as well. Pressing and turning. Okay, and it's starting to look more like a bowl. I'm going to resist the urge to pinch the top here too much. If I do that, if I keep pinching and you do those little tiny pinchers on here, you're going to end up this being really dry and be difficult to work with, and you're probably going to have to start over. So I do have this because I did start over with this lump of clay. I get more kind of tears in the clay as I go, so I'm going to kind of push this back into position. And if you do find that, oh, whoops, I'm goofed up, I have to start over again, you're going to find that the clay is just a little bit drier now the second time you work with it. So here I've got my bowl pretty much done, kind of just feeling around to see if there's some big lump here, anything. And my next step is to start to smooth it out. The inside is going to be fine for now, but I'm going to flip it over. I give it usually a little tap, kind of even out that ledge, and it's kind of squashed. It's not as much of a, half of a sphere as I'd like. So I'm going to do this little move. I cup my hands like this, and I'm going to press against the side, almost like I'm on a potter's wheel and I'm centering the clay. And I'm going to kind of turn the clay in my hand, pushing a little bit of pressure. And yes, the mat is spinning with it. It's not a big deal. And now it's actually a little more spherical again. It's popped up again. And so that's what I want. Now I want to get it smoother. So right now it looks kind of like the surface of the moon. Got some craters on there. So what we're going to do is what I call putting mountains into valleys. So I'm going to take my thumb and I'm just going to kind of drag the clay. You can use whichever, fingers you want. I just seem to use my thumb a lot for this. And I kind of pull the clay across. I don't want to rip it across. You're going to rip a hole in it. You want to put just enough pressure on. You can kind of move the clay around a little bit. Maybe turn it kind of in a circle. Go in a regular direction. And go back and forth a little bit if you have like a larger area you need to fill. And I'm going to get a lot of those mountains out. So it's a little more of a smooth surface. Fewer craters on the moon. And then a final step to this is to kind of smooth out the surface even more by taking a damp sponge, not a wet sponge, a damp sponge, meaning you've put water over it and squeezed most of it out. And I can kind of drag this across the surface, and this gets it to be, you know, pretty well smooth for what we need it for. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, why did you have to put all those mountains into the valleys when you could have just done this? Well, actually, you really can't. I would have just made smooth mountains and valleys. This really helps it kind of even it out a little more. And I can maybe even go over it a little more, smooth a few more of those lumps out. And we have our pinch pot. Now, if we were going to do something where we see the inside, I could do the same thing for the inside. I don't want to get too carried away. I could make this too icky and sloppy, and this could all start to fall apart. So you want to be careful with not using too much water. And so this is not a perfect pinch pot, but we don't need it to be perfect for what we're doing because we're going to be adding a lot of parts to it. So now if you were a student who wanted to put two bowls together and make a sphere for your project, I have another one, not quite as, ready to go. It's almost there. Kind of pop this back up a little bit. And now I want to join these two together so I have a whole sphere. And to do that, I need this stuff right here. This is watered down clay. It's known as slip. I have no idea why it's called slip. I always just remember the name slip because I think if I spilled it on the floor, I would slip on it. But it's just watery clay, but it acts like clay glue. It's going to help hold things together. So the drier your clay is, the more you want to make sure that you have slip. If you have super, super wet clay, you probably, you maybe can get by without this, but we're going to use some. And I'm going to be applying it with a toothbrush, which might seem kind of weird. But the toothbrush has these nice little bristles here, and these bristles will kind of dig into the clay and apply this slip at the same time. So I'm going to, make sure that I can see those little lines. I'm not just going to kind of press the slip on. I want to dig it in there. And this gives us more surface area for that slip to kind of stay in there and have those clay molecules kind of lock together when they fire in the kiln. Because this stuff technically all kind of melts together when you fire it. So here I am, I'm doing this side too. At any time you attach clay, you always want to be using slip. All right, so now I'm going to take the two halves and I'm going to put them together. I don't want to smash them together. I could actually ruin this. I'm going to kind of press them together. So it's going to kind of look like a clamshell or maybe like a big hamburger bun with no hamburger showing. And I'm going to be pressing it together. I want to actually trap the air inside temporarily. Eventually we're going to let it out. But for now we want to trap the air. So I'm going to pressing this. And then I want to get rid of this line. I want this to look like a complete sphere. But if I go this direction with it, I'm just going to make a smooth line. What I need to do is go up and down across this line, back and forth, and get rid of it. Sometimes there'll be like a harder spot here, maybe do more from this side or more from this side. I'm going to go ahead and just keep turning it and doing this. Don't worry, we will smooth this out. Again, get rid of all of this so that the air is completely trapped, because once it's trapped, we can actually form it into some other shapes. It's easier to kind of manipulate once it is. Once we finally let the air out, we poke a hole in it somewhere, then you can't really maneuver it as much. So there, I pretty much got it all trapped in here. So now I can go ahead and I can roll it across the surface, roll it around a little bit, and there we go. If I'll keep doing this, I'll have a pretty smooth sphere. And there we go. The air is trapped inside. If I wanted to make it a little thinner, maybe more of an oblong shape, more ovally shaped, I could kind of go like this, maybe tilt my hand, get the edges a little thinner here. And I could go ahead and alter the shape a little bit like this. But basically, I still have my now sphere of clay made from two pinch pots.